Good evening to all of you, and thank you for joining us on 13 Plus. I'm Mary Coleman. Let's dive right into your story this evening. Now, police officers are issued guns as part of the job, but our National Investigative Team found that even when they're accused of violent crimes like domestic assault, they often get to keep those weapons. Federal law stops those convicted of domestic violence felonies from buying or possessing guns, but our National Investigative Team has found police officers are often not charged or never end up being fully prosecuted. And even those who are, after an accusation, officers often keep those guns. Here's that story tonight.
I want my husband out of the house. He just broke down the door to the bedroom that I locked myself in.
My dad's super drunk, and he's threatened to rip my head off, and he's getting pretty violent with my mom, and it's not the first time.
And pushing me against the wall and putting his hands on my neck.
Get out of here!
Is he in the room?
Yes.
These 911 calls have two things in common: ready access to guns.
Do you know if the guns are loaded?
They all are. He just grabbed one of the guns out of the drawer.
And all the callers were families of Georgia police officers.
Any weapons in the house?
He's a cop, so yes.
Are there any weapons in the house?
There's plenty. He's a police officer.
Domestic violence is a crime in progress. It has a beginning, it has a middle, and it can have a very catastrophic end.
Steve Searcy carried a gun for 40 years. As a lieutenant with the Montgomery, Alabama Police Department, he created a policy to treat officers like any other domestic violence suspect.
Officers had responded to a fellow officer's home on 3 different occasions and didn't make a report, and they thought they were helping him, and then a few months later, he committed suicide. And if you mix alcohol, firearms, and family violence, you've got a deadly cocktail for a murder.
Does he know you're calling?
No. He's a police officer for Eatonton.
2020, Amanda Perrault calls 911 in Putnam County, Georgia.
It's my husband. He's putting his hands on me.
Who is?
My husband.
Is he there now?
Yeah, he is. He works for Eatonton Police Department.
What's his name?
Michael Seth Perrault.
And apparently he's over there whipping up on her ass. And the chief kind of knows that he could have potential to do that.
Officer Seth Perrault was arrested for family violence, but was allowed to keep his weapons while awaiting trial. 6 days later, Amanda Perrault was shot in the head with one of her husband's guns.
Perrault was placed on administrative leave without pay, yet he was still allowed to go train at the gun range that Saturday, 2 days before police found his wife dead from a gunshot wound.
Officer Perrault claimed his wife Amanda shot herself. A jury disagreed. Last year, he was convicted of murder. Few police officers arrested for domestic violence end up in court, according to 2 years of cases we reviewed from Georgia Peace Officer Standards and Training. 87% of officers arrested saw their criminal cases completely dismissed. But Georgia Post found probable cause in 96% of the officers it investigated to suspend or revoke. So how did about half of those officers keep their police certifications? Because Georgia Post uses a special kind of probation. The certification agency faces the same problem prosecutors do. Officers' families don't want to testify.
He's pulled out a gun one other time.
There is a gun in the home?
Yes, ma'am. He's a police officer at Roswell. He's a sergeant, and he's hitting my mom right now.
Roswell Detective Sergeant Chad Harris was arrested for family violence in 2017.
He starts to get really violent. This happens every night. Every night he's off.
It happens every night that he's off?
His wife told investigators Harris never hit her, but police photographed red marks on her face and neck, and the incident report said she attributed his aggressiveness to being a police officer. Prosecutors asked the court to take the officer's guns while he was out on bail, but the magistrate ruled to restrict the accused access or proximity to weapons would prevent him working as a law enforcement officer. The section restricting dangerous weapons on the standard bond conditions form was crossed out by hand.
Do you know if he's got any weapons on him?
Not on him, but he hasn't pulled the gun out before.
After reviewing that 911 call and the incident report, prosecutors went back to the magistrate, who modified the bond to take his guns. Sergeant Harris resigned from Roswell PD. His wife told prosecutors she wanted the case dismissed, so they dropped all charges except disorderly conduct. He pleaded guilty under Georgia's first offender law, which dismissed the disorderly charges after a probationary period. Cherokee deputies were back at his house in 2021 after his daughter called 911.
Okay, what?
My dad is drunk, and he's attacking my mom and my brother. You've called before.
Okay.
Please don't have sirens on. It'll be so much worse.
I'm not no bullshit asshole. I'm one of you.
The former officer was not charged in that incident. Harris did not return our messages, and he is not currently with any police department, but he remains a post-certified officer.
And the last line of defense is the Police Officer Standards and Training Commission.
If they determined there was an act of domestic violence, should they be revoking these certifications?
In my opinion, yes, because what's going to happen is that officer is going to go to work somewhere else.
1 out of 4 officers investigated for domestic violence by Georgia Post kept their jobs. 2 were promoted by their agencies. Out of 37 arrests we reviewed, only 1 officer was convicted on the original charges. The rest can keep their guns under a federal law known as the Lautenberg Amendment.
If you've got a conviction, not just an arrest, but a conviction for domestic violence, you can't possess a firearm, and you can't be a police officer anywhere in the United States.
Because you have to have a gun to be a police officer.
Exactly.
And according to the Giffords Law Center to Prevent Gun Violence, at least 24 states and D.C. allow a judge to temporarily ban someone from buying or having a gun if it's considered an emergency. That includes here in Arizona. Now, there is a current challenge to the law that's in front of the Supreme Court. Arguments were made in November, and justices seem to be leaning toward not striking down the law, but a final ruling has not yet been made. We'll be sure to keep you updated. Thank you for joining us. We will be back here tomorrow at 7 p.m., and we hope you will join us tonight for 13 News Live at 10. For now, we will leave you with the live look of Tucson. Things a little chilly out there for all of you. We hope you are staying warm, and again, we hope you will join us later. Have a great evening.